St Maurice and his companions. Maurice or Mauritius comes from mari, meaning the sea or bitter, cis, which means vomiting or hard, and us, a counselor or one who hastens. Or the name comes from mauron, which according to Isidore is the Greek word for black. St. Maurice had bitterness from dwelling in misery and being put far from his native land. He vomited in the sense that he rejected everything superfluous. He was hard and firm in bearing the torments of his martyrdom. He was a counselor in the exhortation he addressed to his troops. He was one who hastened by his fervor and the multiplication of his good works. And he was black in his contempt of self. The Passion of these saints was written and compiled by Saint Eucherius, Bishop of Lyon. It is said that Maurice was the commander of the Holy Legion called Theban. The soldiers were called Thebans after their city, the name of which was called Thebes. This was the region toward the east beyond the border of Arabia, a land powerful and wealthy, fertile and fruitful, and pleasantly wooded. The inhabitants of the region are said to be tall and sturdy, expert in arms, brave in warfare, shrewd and witty, and richly endowed with wisdom. The city had 100 gates and was situated above the Nile River, which flows out of the earthly paradise and is called Gihon. Of this city it is said, "Behold old Thebes lying crushed with her 100 gates." Here, James the Lesser preached the gospel of salvation and perfectly taught the people the faith of Christ. Diocletian and Maximian, however, who began to reign in AD 277, were determined to wipe out the Christian religion, and sent letters to this effect to all the provinces where Christians dwelt. They wrote, "If there was something to be decided or known, and the whole world was marshalled on one side and Rome alone on the other, the whole world would flee in defeat, and Rome would stand alone at the peak of knowledge. Why do you poor little folk resist her command, and draw yourselves up so stubbornly against her statutes? Therefore either accept belief in the immortal gods, or the immutable sentence of condemnation will be pronounced against you." The Christians received these letters, but sent the messengers back without an answer. Diocletian and Maximian were angry at this, and dispatched orders to all the provinces that all men capable of bearing the weapons of war should muster, and should subdue all those who were rebelling against the Roman Empire. The emperor's letters were delivered to the people of Thebes, and these people, in obedience to God's command, rendered to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. they recruited a choice legion of 6,666 soldiers and sent them to the emperors to help them in waging just wars, not therefore to suppress Christians, but rather to defend them. The commander of this sacred legion was the illustrious Maurice, and its standard bearers were Candidus, Innocent, Exuperius, Victor, and Constantine. Diocletian now sent Maximian, his associate emperor, to Gaul with an immense army, to which he attached the Theban legion. Pope Marcellinus had admonished the Thebans that they should rather perish by the sword than violate the Christian faith which they had made their own. When the whole army had crossed the Alps and come to Octodorus, the emperor commanded that all who were with him should offer sacrifice to the idols and should unanimously take an oath against Rome's rebellious subjects, but particularly against Christians. When the holy soldiers heard this, they withdrew a distance of 8 miles from the army, and made camp along the Rhone in a pleasant place called Agaun. When Maximian learnt of this, he sent soldiers to tell them to come quickly and offer sacrifice to the gods with the others. The Thebans answered that, being Christians, they could not do this. The emperor, fuming with anger, said, "An insult to heaven is added to the contempt directed at me, and as I am despised, so is the Roman religion. But these willful soldiers know that I can avenge not only myself but my gods." The emperor then sent his soldiers to deliver the order that either the Thebans were to sacrifice to the gods, or every 10th one of them was to be beheaded. The saints then joyfully hastened forward, one after the other, bending his neck to receive the headman's death blow. Now St Maurice rose in their midst and addressed them. "I rejoice with you all, because you are all ready to die for the faith of Christ. I have allowed your fellow soldiers to be put to death, because I saw you prepared to suffer for Christ, and I have kept the command the Lord gave Peter. Put your sword into its sheath. Now that the bodies of our comrades form a barricade around us, and our garments are reddened with their blood, let us follow them to martyrdom. Therefore, if you agree, let us send our answer to Caesar. We are your soldiers, Emperor, and we have taken arms to defend the commonwealth. There is no treason in us, no fear, but we will not betray the faith of Christ." Receiving this message, the irate emperor ordered a second decimation of the Thebans. When that had been done, Exuperius, the standard-bearer, picked up a banner and, standing amidst the troops, said, "Maurice, our glorious leader, has spoken to us about the glory of our comrades. Now let me say that Exuperius, your standard-bearer, has not taken arms to resist dying for Christ. I say, let our right hands throw aside these carnal weapons, and be armed with virtues. And if it please you, let us send this reply to the Emperor. We are your soldiers, O Emperor, but we freely profess that we are Christ's servants. To you we owe our military service, to him our innocence. From you we have received wages for our work, from him the beginnings of life itself. So for him we are prepared to suffer every torment, and we will never give up our faith in him. The impious emperor now commanded his army to surround the whole legion, so that not one man should escape. The soldiers of Christ were therefore surrounded by the soldiers of the devil, struck down by murderous hands, trampled by horses' hooves, and consecrated to Christ as his precious martyrs. They suffered about 280 AD. By God's will, a large number of the Thebans did escape, and went to other regions to preach the name of Christ, and to triumph most gloriously in many places. Among them we learn that Salutor, Adventor, and Octavius went to Turin, Alexander to Bergamo, Secundus to Ventimiglia, and there were also Constantius, Victor, Ursus, and a great many others. When the bloody killers had divided the booty, and were making merry together, an old man named Victor happened to pass by, and they invited him to join them in their feasting. He asked them how they could be having such a jolly celebration with so many thousands of dead soldiers lying around. And someone told him that the dead had died for the faith of Christ. Victor sighed and groaned, declaring that he would be blessed if he had been slain with them. As soon as they became aware that the old man was a Christian, they fell upon him and cut him to pieces. Some time later, and on the same day, the two emperors, Maximian at Milan and Diocletian at Nicomedia, laid aside the purple and retired to private life, leaving the rule to younger men, namely Constantius, Maximus, and Galerius, whom they made Caesars. But in time Maximian wanted to resume his tyrannical rule. But Constantius, his son-in-law, ran him down and hanged him. The body of Saint Innocent, who belonged to the Theban legion, had been thrown into the Rhone River, but was recovered by Bishop Domitian of Geneva, Bishop Gratus of Aosta, Bishop Protasius, and others, and by them buried in a church that they built for the purpose. While the church was under construction, and most of the workmen were at Mass on Sunday, one of them, a pagan, went on with his work alone. Suddenly the legion of the saints appeared, seized the pagan, beat him, and reproached him for engaging in profane labor and toiling at mechanical tasks on the Lord's day. When the others were occupied in divine service, being thus corrected, the man ran to the church and begged to be made a Christian. Ambrose, in his preface for these martyrs, says, "This troop of faithful men, illustrious with the light of God, came from the ends of the earth to plead happily with you, O Lord. This legion of warriors fenced about with bodily weapons, but also protected by spiritual arms, hastened with watchful constancy to martyrdom. The pestiferous tyrant, in order to terrorize them, massacred every 10th man with the beheading of sword, and when the rest clung steadfastly to their faith, ordered all of them to submit to the same penalty. But so ardent was the fervor of their love that, discarding their arms, they knelt before their headsman, and with joyful hearts received the blow that killed them. Among them, blessed Maurice, afire with love for your faith, sustained the combat and won the crown of martyrdom. Thus Ambrose." A woman entrusted her son to the abbot of a monastery where the bodies of some of the Theban martyrs reposed. The boy was there to be instructed, but before long he died, and the mother mourned him inconsolably. St Maurice appeared to her and asked why she wept so much for her son, and she replied that as long as she lived, she would never stop mourning her loss. Maurice said, "Do not think of him as being dead. Know that he is living with us. If you want proof of this, come to the service of Matins tomorrow, and every day, and you will hear his voice among the voices of the monks as they chant the Psalms." The woman followed the saint's admonition and always discerned her son's voice as he sang with the monks. After King Gonstran had retired from worldly pomp and circumstance, and had distributed his wealth to the poor and the churches, he sent a priest to obtain for him some sacred relics of the holy martyrs. On his return voyage across the lake of Lausanne, a tempest arose and the ship was sinking. But the priest held up the chest containing the relics in the face of the storm, and a serene calm settled over the waves. In the year 963 AD, certain monks, acting on behalf of Charles, obtained from Pope Nicholas the bodies of Pope St. Urban and St. Tiburtius. On their way home, they visited the church of the Theban martyrs, and besought that the abbot and the monks to allow them to transport the body of St. Maurice and the head of St. Innocent to the church in Auxerre, that St. Germain had long since dedicated to the martyrs. Peter Damian tells us that in Burgundy there was a certain proud, ambitious cleric who had taken over for himself a church dedicated to St. Maurice. Despite the determined opposition of a powerful knight, one day when Mass was being celebrated, and the deacon at the end of the Gospel sang, "Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." The wretched cleric scoffed and said, "That is false. If I had humbled myself before my enemies, I would not now have this rich church for myself." Instantly, a flash of lightning darted into the mouth out of which he had spewed these blasphemous words, and that was the end of the blasphemer.